Hello, members of the CFUW Sherbrooke and District Book Club. My name is Starr Wood. I am the author of Once Upon a Timepiece. One of your members, Eva, has a daughter-in-law based in Singapore called Samantha, and she is a graphic designer. And Samantha was the one who designed the cover for my book, Once Upon a Timepiece. And she mentioned to me that your group was reading my book and asked if I would say a few words about the background to the book, why I wrote it, what I was hoping to achieve, and so on. And I'm delighted to do so, and thank you so much for your interest in my book. I think for those of you who've read it, you're well aware that it's a collection of short stories. So there are 12 short stories. Each one, I think, is designed to stand alone. You can read it on its own without reference to any of the others and hopefully enjoy it. But the stories are also connected to each other. And the device that connects all of the stories is an antique gold watch. Each story has its own set of characters, but they're connected by this gold watch which passes from story to story to story. And it passes through the book in a variety of ways. The watch might be lost and then found. It might be sold. It might be inherited. It might be lost in a gambling bet, and so on. So this gold watch features in all the stories, connecting all the different sets of characters. But it's more than just a connecting device. The watch also, I think, serves to illustrate one of the central themes of the book, which of course is time. And in particular how people relate to time, how it influences them, and so on. So exploring issues like the fleeting nature of time, memory, urgency, procrastination, things like this. And I think that time is a fascinating concept to explore, and hopefully my stories help to shed some interesting views on how people relate to time. Another, I think, central idea to the book, which the watch helps to illustrate, is the idea of connection, and the fact that humanity is a global network of connected beings, but the connections that join us together are often unseen and unknown. And I think this is a concept which is often expressed in the more popularly in the notion of 6 degrees of separation. The idea that you can connect yourselves to any other person on the world through six connections. And hopefully this device of the watch passing from people to people helps to explore that notion of connection. And it's an idea, I think, which is really expressed most completely in the 12th story of the book, where all those connections are brought into the plot of that final story. I thought I'd say a few words about the sort of the format of the book. Obviously, it's a collection of short stories, which together you could argue make up a longer novel or perhaps novella. I've always been fascinated with short stories. When I was a young teenager, I started reading short stories by the likes of Somerset Maugham and O. Henry and Roald Dahl. And of course, in Canada, you have a very, very famous short story writer in Alice Munro. And so I've always been interested in short stories as a literary form, I think, because they're so challenging. They require extreme brevity, and to be able to develop real deep characters as well as plot and other things in just a few thousand words requires huge effort, much more than you would imagine. I think there's a famous quote, and I'm not sure who said it. It's attributed to many people. I think it's probably either Winston Churchill or Mark Twain, but he was talking to one of his friends and he said, "I'm sorry that I wrote you a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short letter." And I think that expresses, very nicely how difficult it is to be precise and brief and short, and yet still say things that are meaningful. There are many different types of short story, of course, and the ones that feature in my book all have a sort of structure where there's a sting in the tail or a twist in the tail. And again, ever since I was a teenager, this is a form which I've always enjoyed. I like its playful nature. Some critics look at the form of short stories where there is a twist in the tail and think they frown upon it. They think it's perhaps cheap and lightweight. But I would very much disagree with that. I think that, but it has to be done right. You can't just have a twist in the tail that is just only a plot device. I think it has to serve many purposes. And I think, for example, it's often a very interesting way to explore the unknown bias or prejudices of readers. It also is a very nice way, I think, to expose character flaws in the story through their hypocrisies and so on. So for me, short stories that have a twist in the tail, they are, of course, fun to read, but I think they also have a very unique way of expressing ideas and getting people to question some of their assumptions that they've made during the course of the story. One final observation I think that might be interesting on the form is the idea of a short story cycle, and the fact that short stories do stand on their own, but they can be combined in very interesting ways, and that's what is often referred to as a short story cycle. And there are many famous examples across literary history. If you look at James Joyce, he wrote Dubliners, where the connection between all the stories was a sense of place. And the stories all tell about Dublin at a certain time and try to create an image of the city through this collection of short stories. Another famous example from the US is Sherwood Anderson, who wrote a book called Winesburg, Ohio. And that explores the growth and development of a particular individual, again in a small provincial town. And the stories are unconnected, except that they all refer to the same character. And so you have put together these stories tell a very nice development of this particular person. So I'll end there. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more insight into why I was writing it and what I was hoping to achieve. And once again, thank you very much for all of your interest in my book.